So now it's time for curtain call. And my question for you is, you were talking about JFK and how you had spoke at his gravesite. Jeremy, it's time for you to let us in. Who killed JFK? Who do you think killed JFK?
That's a good question, right?
Have you studied it at all?
Oh, man. A lot. Number one is, have you ever heard of the shoebox theory when it comes to the universe?
No.
Shoebox theory is that there's if you can imagine a tiny shoebox and a bigger shoebox, it's never ending. So you zoom all the way into our cells and into our mitochondria and into the atom, never ending. You can keep on going up from micro to macro. And I think that the structure of the world is no different. And so it's easy in all of the conspiracies of who killed JFK to point a finger and say, well, it was the government, or it was this secret society, or this secret society, or it was this shadow government, or was all of these things. And I think that the rabbit hole goes down and up as far as your mind can fathom.
Okay.
And no matter where you want to point the finger, here's why I think he was killed. With whatever person they want to put the spotlight on as being responsible, with whatever party you want to point at or anything, you have to look at the decisions that he was making leading up to his death. And in the final recordings in his last 7 days, JFK is recorded as saying that he's discovered that there's a plot to enslave every man, woman, and child, and that he will not stand for it. And he won later that week to reinstate precious metals as backing a part of our U.S. currency. Because when you do that, you're undoing what the elite and the wherever you want to point, it goes up way further than you could imagine would, and how they would control our currency. And so what had happened at that point is we had a fiat currency. And this is so important to every political and conspiratorial based conversation, because there's so much emotion that can get wrapped up in it that it's really hard to stay rational, logical, and you have to understand how currencies and monetary systems work if you really want to understand human history. And the fact of the matter is, a fiat currency, if you don't know what that is a currency that's based on zero, based on nothing. It's a piece of paper no more than this Post-it that says "more clients now" on it. It's like no inherent value besides, burning it and, allowing for it to warm you up in a time of dire need. But we have a system that agrees that, this dollar is $1 and that it can buy this much milk or bread, or it's worth this much potential gold if you bought the gold. You can't trade it anymore because it's based on gold or silver or nickel, like JFK reinstated. He instated nickel into the currency. And our monetary system at one point in time was based on dollar for dollar gold and silver worth. Over time, that's been taken out, and now we have a digital system that's based on at the Federal Reserve, which is not a federal company. It's called the Federal Reserve, but it's a private institution, no more federal than FedEx.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
If you want the full in this, you have to look at a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a thick book that describes the entire history, manipulated by textbooks and history of the American monetary system and the world monetary system. And with a fiat currency, it's based on zero. So when they put new money in the economy, they're writing a check from a check that has a balance in the account of zero. It just creates dollars. And when it does that, every single time they do that, it takes away the individual worth of our dollar each. But we can't see it because it's paper. You only see it later on in form of taxes and in forms of prices going up and inflation.
Okay, so how does that connect to JFK?
So JFK inherited a fiat monetary system, which is based on zero, and he reinstated precious metals as starting to back the currency. Because when you do that, you give power back to the people. And there was hundreds of years that it had taken to create a fiat monetary system. What you have to understand about fiat currencies is that there are tens of thousands of fiat currencies that have been recorded through mankind in history, and every single one of them has always crashed and gone back down to its original value, which is zero. And when you do that, there's a transition of power that happens. And what we are living in right now is the end of the tail and the end of the era and the end of the eon with what happens with the fiat currency, which is we are all being transacted, and the signature is basically drying on the paper as we speak. JFK was taken out because he was starting to undo what the world elite had been effectively putting in place for so long, which is taking the power completely away from the people. JFK was not taken out because of some political view or anything like that, or I think in a warehouse. He taken out because he was reinstating precious metals into the monetary system, backing the money. He wanted to undo the Federal Reserve, and he wanted to undo all these private banks, which is the literal of any democracy or republic.
It's the first time I've ever heard this. I've heard, lots of theories, from the mob to Cuba.
There's a lot of fingers to point, right?
Yeah, but I never thought it was the elites that were upset about this currency issue.
And it's the elites' bosses of the bosses of their bosses of their boss. And it goes so much further and higher. These are people that are not documented in history books, that have rewritten the history, that have us all believing a certain thing, that have us voting and thinking that that's what actually changed. And what we're going to see is eventually the markets are, and I think we're going to see in the next 4 years, if their plan goes to the T. It would have happened earlier if we hadn't had the 45th president in. And what we're going to see is that so gold right now is worth almost or at $2,000 an ounce. And so like I keep this on me. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening, I'm holding up a silver dollar. This is a piece of 99.9% silver. And if I went to the grocery store, this is worth $1. But in silver, this is worth about 20. So if I went to a jeweler and sold this to a jeweler, they'd hand me $2 for this $1 coin. And I hold this because at one point in time, this is the only money that I had, but I hold this to also remind me of what's true value in terms of the monetary system. It's tangible goods. And I'm not sure, I forget the exact question that you asked, but you have to keep your eye on truth, which is very hard when they kind of have 3 cups over the ball and they're moving them constantly, confusing everyone and doing kind of the magic trick until they lift up all 3 cups and there's no ball there left. You have to understand how the money works, the downfall of the fiat currencies, if you really want to understand all the conspiracy and all the stuff and all the finger pointing, because they have us believing it's politics and mob and Illuminati or Masons or any one of these many different names they masquerade as. But even those people are like the D list and the D level of the people who are truly in power and actually running the show.
You say what's happening to us right now as far as conspiracies, like we're not knowing what is happening to us right now. What do you mean?
If you take your eye off of the ball, you can no longer track the ball. And so you just have to understand how these the people who fund the politician to operate in what they want, and then you got to look at who's funding them and who's having it's very hard if you're tracking the news or even conspiracies on the internet to sort truth from fact and fiction. Okay. What I like to look at is things that have never been manipulated. When you look at ancient history, which can be and has been manipulated, we go through smart periods, super intelligence, meaning when the Greeks were able to make models 1-for-1 ratio to the exact T, that's an example of civilization being super, super smart. When you get to, I think, the technological age that we're in right now, that's when you can see us at our dumbest and the most asleep. And now I think we're entering a waking up phase of truth. And so over thousands of years, we oscillate. Ancients found is that actually tracks with where our solar system is in conjunction of the Milky Way to the center. The closer we get to the center, the smarter we get. And the further our solar system moves away from the center of the galaxy, the dumber, the more asleep we fall. And this is a 100,000 year cycle that happens between super intelligence and super stupidity, essentially. And so, go ahead.
Well, so you're talking about the election. You're saying that there's a conspiracy in this election?
I'm not saying there is or is conspiracy, because if we're looking at this individual election as a thing, we're taking our eye off of the ball. What we have to understand, they want us divided because we're easier to control. So anytime I think this takes us back into what we were talking about in our brief moment off air.
Okay.
anytime the US government or the military wing of the world has created a war anywhere else or gone to war, the first thing we do is we civil unrest. We get the people fighting each other, make them distracted, and to let them kill some of themselves off first, to weaken themselves first. Use all their ammo, all their supplies, all their best people, get the people fighting each other people first, and we take over somewhere. Is you get the people fighting, get them divided, and then they're much easier to compromise. And that's what we have going on right now with our two-party system and with where the current election is. So whether or not there's a conspiracy, I think most people who understand conspiracy and understand power will be like, it's totally a plot to divide us, to make us weaker, and to take our power away from us. I don't think either president has my individual best interest in mind, or any candidate has my individual best interest in mind. I'm just not that easily fooled. The news may make it look like that, but I just don't think that's necessarily the case. These are lawyers who are funded to go and change the law while they're in office, at least until we had an entrepreneur in office, which again is a businessman. He's going to make deals for the betterment of the country, not necessarily the betterment of the world. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll be completely transparent. I don't vote. I know what's within my power, and I understand, looking historically, elections are completely manipulated and rigged. In this digital age, like, dude, there are third party world who wins by the end of the day. And look at what's just happening with our election right now. So we have to make sure, which, I hate to like take off of your question and have to go another way with it, but we have to keep our eye on the real prize. And you can look at the actions. Like when I say neither president has my own best interest in mind or my people's best interest in mind, one says that they're going to take away the taxes and took away a lot of taxes. The other says they're going to bring the tax, but who took the taxes away? Government spending. And that the people have to pay for that. It's a tax in a different way. It's an interest charge in a different way. So you can't completely take away taxes and introduce government spending and expect there to be a difference. Someone has to pay for that, and that price always goes back to the people. And this last president, if everything goes the way the news is saying that it's going to go, and the story the news is portraying, then we're going to get a bunch of new taxes back and no lowering of government spending. So now we're going to get taxed twice. If you really want to understand the monetary systems and the real stuff going on, I think there's no better person to follow than Peter Schiff on this sort of stuff.
Is that Adam Schiff's brother?
No, it's not. That's a whole other side story and a whole rabbit hole. When you understand who's in that family and who's influencing that family, that's where you actually start the answers of who's up at the top.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have time for one more question?
Let's do it.
Aliens. All right. I mean, we were told for the longest time there's no such thing as aliens. There's no such thing as life outside of Earth, or that we've ever found. And slowly, within the past few years, they've started leaking out more and more stuff that, okay, yes, here's some videos that, that the Army or Air Force has that we are slowly letting out. It's like they're acknowledging it. Mm-hmm. How long do you think there's always been aliens? Do you think there's been aliens? And is there a conspiracy to cover that up?
I think there's more proof that the human race itself, from the ancient historical perspective, I think there's more proof that the aliens are among us and that we are them than that is separate from us. I think they've been here longer than the human race has.
So you're saying they're shapeshifters?
I'm saying that they may or may not masquerade with us. I don't have personal evidence to say that I've ever seen that personally, but I do know that their technology far exceeds ours. So you don't need to shape shift if you can completely go shapeless.
Whoa, you're saying they're invisible?
I'm saying that their technology far exceeds ours. And so let's say that they're millions of years advanced from us and understand time travel or something like that, which is just understanding and unraveling the quantum physics side. Time is not a linear thing. Only now exists. The past is no longer here, and the future tomorrow is just going to be today, tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So it's time is an illusion. There's only it's just a sequence of now, experiencing of now. So let's say that there's been a civilization that has gone, that exists in the future and understands and unravels travel. Like, think of the technology that they has unfathomable to us. Now, do I have personal experiences where I've seen that happen? I 100% do. Some of them I can't share. One of them I can. The day I launched my first business, got incorporated, launched my first business, it was a clothing line. And I took the day off of Apple at the time. And,
took a day off of Apple to start a clothing line.
Yeah. And like, I was, working on my website and social media where I have enough wisdom to know that that's not building a business. That's not starting a business. Mm-hmm. I was wasting a bunch of time and prolonging sales and having conversations with people, which is the biggest thing that plagues most of the people that hire me, is that they've done the website, they've done all the other, crap. I don't know who your audience is. I curse a lot with the people who pay me because they pay me, and
Oh yeah, you can say shit. It's all right.
Okay, cool. So there's all this wasteless shit that you can do that you feel like you're playing business. I was playing business on that day. My girlfriend at the time and I went to Einstein Bagels to go get some breakfast, and we're coming back. I was sitting in my Chevy car driving, and I notice a plane that's flying way lower, or an aircraft flying way lower than normal and going so unbelievably slow that it caught my eye right above my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And this aircraft would look more like a NASA space shuttle than it did an airplane. And it was flying extremely slow. And I'm like, babe, I'm like, look at this. Like, this thing's flying slow. And what we saw in the coming 15 seconds solidified everything I had looked up and looked into and what I know about them being amongst us, or at least the technology of them, if nothing else. And that was this aircraft turned on its invisibility mechanism in front of us. And it didn't just go invisible. It like kind of slowly evaporated. And then when it went completely invisible in the sky, there's the sun's reflection caught off of it for an instant, almost like a flash would look. And then it completely went away. And then I saw it again happen about 14 days later above my city. And so do I think that was alien? No. Do I think that was alien technology? Probably.
How far away are you from Area 51?
Well, my family is not far. I'm a state away. So Arizona's right next to New Mexico. And so
that's
it's not that far. But all my family, it's all good. All my family is from Las Cruces, New Mexico. I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Having a grandfather in the military who confided a lot in me in his final days has shown me that the things you think are fiction and science fiction way closer to the truth than the things we're seeing on the news and on what we would consider reality TV.
Wow. Well, there's
proof that there's proof of, before we close the curtain, there's proof of certain people being interdimensional refugees that were kind of dropped off here and taken and now have just become a part of us. And there is proof where Atlantis is or was, that was once land, and where the U.S. was once under Bermuda Triangle. There are pyramids there that emit energy. They're a part of a whole energetic system on Earth that goes between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn along our equator. Almost like a Nikola Tesla energetic system that exists for free energy. And the Egyptians don't take credit for the pyramids. If you really want to understand the truth and go back, you look at the name Hermes Trismegistus and you understand what that person has transcended through history. Hermes Trismegistus is going to be the closest you're going to get to the truth outside of this podcast or looking up your own stuff. And he takes credit for making the pyramids, manifesting them. Anywho, Atlantis wasn't where three races existed together. There was a small race that was the leaders, and they lasted way longer than the like 80 to 100 year lifespans we have. And there were two other civilizations, almost like in a bullseye form on the land. And at one point in time, when Atlantis started sinking, they freaked out because they had lost their clairvoyance, which they had at the time. And there's these ancient stories that you have to kind of sort through a lot of information for yourself of like the seeding of the human race, interdimensional tantric sex, and bringing in way more enlightened beings from the outside, and stories of certain races, I won't get into them, that were actually interdimensional refugees who were just kind of dropped off here and left and are now.
Jimmy, your mind's wild. I think it's great.
We started with leadership and business, and we ended up way over here. But these are the sort of conversations that I go on for a long. Also, though, to get the whole thing. There's going to be some people who go down an unfortunate rabbit hole because of all of this. You only have what you can influence and control in your life. And every single day you're voting with your actions, election or not, certain situation or not. And so all of that, the way I operate my life and implore my students and my social following and my family to be living their lives is as a result of all these things I know. It's start a business, create wealth so that you have enough time and space and monetary resources to pay for the information, to be buying better food, to be helping more people and changing more than being a part of. And so you might look at me as a online entrepreneur, but I'm talking about all these conspiracy things, but I'm doing what I do because of what I've learned on the other side, understanding that there's a lot of things that are manipulated. We'll only have so much time in the day. I'm going to die one day. I lost my mom. She was at a very young age in the grand scheme of things. And I didn't have to deal with much death in my life until that. And then there was a ton of it after that. But I know how precious of a gift life is. And we only have so much time in the day. Don't spend it consuming information. Be very cognizant of the things you consume and be a net creator. That's the key. And being of service to the people.
I don't necessarily look to you as just an entrepreneur. At this point, Jimmy, you're a thought leader. You are a leader of thought that I think people are going to get a lot out of our podcast and the YouTube video and our extra clips we'll put out there of stuff. I think we have touched on so many different things that may or may not have been on the original questions that I gave you. I think there's something for everybody on this podcast.